emergency.
Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please.
Well, okay, what does he look like?
He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record. Could you just send somebody over here?
Okay, what is he doing there?
He just drove up again.
He just drove
somebody
up.
over.
Okay, wait a minute. What kind of car is he in?
He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in.
Okay, wait a minute. What's your name?
Nicole Simpson.
Welcome to the Brothers in Crime podcast.
We are brothers.
We talk about true crime,
We don't take ourselves too seriously.
and you shouldn't either. I'm going to tell you a story you've never heard before, because no one knows this story the way I know it. It takes place on the night of June 12th, 1994, and it concerns the murder of my ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her young friend, Ronald Goldman. I want you to forget everything you think you know about that night because I know the facts better than anyone. I know the players. I've seen the evidence. I've heard the theories. And of course, I've read all the stories. That I did it, but I don't know I did it, that I can no longer tell fact from fiction, that I wake up in the middle of the night consumed by guilt, screaming. Man, they even had me wondering, what if I did it? Well, sit back, people. The things I know and the things I believe, you can't even imagine. And I'm going to share them with you. Because the story you know, or think you know, that's not the story. Not even close. This is one story the whole world got wrong. So that's a quote from O.J. Simpson's book, If I Did It. What do you think, Bob?
If I did it. That whole book's a joke.
I should point out that the cover, at least originally, the if is in such small font that you can't even see it. So it looks like the title of the book is just, I Did It.
Which is something you can say after you've been acquitted of murder.
This is true. So, OJ, who the heck is this guy, Bob? You know, he's a little bit... I kind of came along later to the scene. You were around for more a different OJ era. And I think before we started recording, you brought up a good point that OJ's sort of viewed a little bit differently depending on, you know, maybe your age or what things you're interested in or whatever. You might have a different take on who he was or what he was involved with. So can you take us down the path of the many lives of OJ Simpson?
Yeah, I mean, I think depending on your age pretty much is who you knew, what you knew about him. For me, I just knew him as the Hertz Rent-A-Car guy. Because he did those ads on TV for the Hertz Rent-A-Cars.
Nobody has more of what it takes to rid you of Fairmont, Mustang, LTD, or other fine car faster.
Hertz, the superstar.
You know it.
Prior to that, he spent a good bit of time in the NFL, mostly playing for the Buffalo Bills. He was the first overall draft pick, like first round, first pick, running back for the Bills.
He didn't play for the Broncos?
No, Bronco comes in much later in life.
Okay.
But even before that, his early life is kind of interesting. He was lived with his family in San Francisco. That could explain a whole lot. His mom was an orderly in a psychiatric ward. His dad was a custodian and a cook and also a pretty well-known drag queen in the San Francisco area.
That sounds like he's got a well-rounded upbringing then.
I mean, that's kind of interesting. Dad rolled out when OJ was like 4 years old. I guess, you know, he wasn't into being with girls. But anyway,
So to understand this correctly then, so OJ was raised by his mom, basically?
By his mom, yeah. And he, a funny thing about his name, they pretty much called him OJ from birth on. His aunt in Louisiana had named him Orenthal. And he didn't know that was his name until a teacher used it in like the third grade. And he's like, who are you talking about?
I mean, to be fair, like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah, I didn't know that until, of course, the trial. But so mom and the kids, they grew up in the housing projects, and he had rickets when he was a kid, so that was
Rickets?
no fun.
What the heck is rickets?
Well, it caused him to have to wear braces on his legs until he was 5, which is sort of why he had that bow-legged stance about him, is from this childhood disease.
Oh, it's a disease.
Yeah.
It's not like a pet.
No. As a kid, he was scalping tickets to make a few bucks. And then in his early teenage years, he ended up running with a gang there in San Francisco. Spent some time in juvie. Then in high school, he'd been arrested like 3 times and was headed down a pretty bad path. Even his first wife said like he was just an awful person then.
Oh, wow.
But after the 3rd time he got arrested, he met Willie Mays.
Like the Willie Mays?
The Willie Mays.
Now, wait a second. I've been around some young folks who had no idea who Willie Mays was, and I'm not kidding you when I share this story. They were like, is he the OxyClean guy?
No, that's Billy Mays.
Right. So just to clarify for
who's
our
also
listeners,
dead.
Yeah, true, but 2 very different personalities. So Willie Mays, famous baseball player, in case you don't know.
So Willie Mays kind of gave OJ some advice and encouraged him to stay the hell out of trouble. And at that point, I mean, it seemed to stick because he did well in high school football. He did well in college football, Heisman Trophy winner, #1 overall draft pick in the NFL, had a pretty decent career there, like, I don't know, 10, 12 years, something like that. After that, he goes on to be a sportscaster, as many athletes do, and does fine with that, gets all these endorsement deals. The one that sticks out to me is the Hertz one. So, you know, he's up there in the yellow blazer or whatever, pitching the Hertz rent-a-cars. I don't know if they still exist anymore.
They do.
Oh, good.
Used one the last, anyway, that doesn't matter. Yeah.
Then, so, you know, people I think know him probably from his football career in the early 70s or from his spokesperson career in the late 70s, early 80s. But then he takes on a new persona in the early 90s when he's, you know, leading police on a low-speed chase going all over L.A. in his white Bronco, which I think most people refer to now as an OJ Bronco.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when you bring up OJ, that's what I think of. The first time that I really... he ended up on my radar was the Bronco chase. And I do remember it. And I remember thinking like...
Same here. And they're like, OJ, you know, the news is like OJ's in this case. Because this went on. This chase was ridiculous. His friend A.J. Cowlings was driving. And AC Cowlings was driving. And supposedly OJ was in the back with a gun and threatening to kill himself or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so it was weird to... And I'm like, OJ, you know, the Hertz guy? What's...
Yeah, what?
You know, and of course Dad's like, oh, you used to play football. Oh, really? Yeah. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, why is he on a chase? What's he running from? Oh, well, his ex-wife and a friend of hers were murdered, and he's been accused. Mm-hmm. And I think from June 12th of, what was that, 94?
That sounds right, but I have it in my notes. Hold on. Yeah. I'm not there yet. You're 94, yep. June 12th, 94.
Yeah, from June 12th of 94 on, I think that most people... what they know about OJ is that murder. Right. And his former life and career is pretty much just an aside at this point. And I'm not saying that's wrong.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, that's, you know, it's a good intro for folks who maybe come from different places and spaces to just kind of get a picture of who that guy is. But, man, that's enough talking about him. I want to talk a little bit about Nicole Brown Simpson, who, as you kind of alluded to in your chronology there, would be part of the reason why we're talking about OJ today.
She was fine, too.
Oh, you crack me up. So she was born in Frankfurt, West Germany, May 19th, 1959. And
she got the Hagen and the Das.
As a toddler, I don't know how I do this with you. She moved, as a toddler, her family moved to the United States, and they settled in Garden Grove, California. She had 3 sisters, so Dad had his hands full with 4 daughters. God bless him. And Nicole apparently had no problem adjusting to life in California. She gravitated toward the beach as a young teenager, which, I mean, I can't imagine that you wouldn't, living out there, spend some time at the beach and really enjoy it. And she's also, to Bob's point a second ago, she was named homecoming princess at Dana Hills High School. So just a quick overview of some of her early life. But unfortunately for her, at the early age of 18, she would meet O.J. Simpson. And I believe she was a waitress at the time.
Yeah.
At like a nice, like, upscale restaurant.
Daisy in Beverly Hills.
Oh, you've been there?
No.
You have a table there, huh?
I would not say if I had. Yeah, I mean, never mind the fact that when they met and they started dating, OJ was still married and had a baby on the way.
I was getting there. So he was 29 at the time. And as you just said, right, he was still married and had those kids. But wouldn't take long. By all accounts, these two kind of fell hot and heavy for each other, despite the age difference and despite the fact that, the little detail that Simpson was married. So he divorced his first wife in 1979, and that cleared the way for him to marry Nicole.
Bye, Marguerite.
Exactly. So they got married in February of 1985 at what's been described as his palatial home in the swanky LA neighborhood known as Brentwood. You ever been there?
I don't know. Every time I hear of Brentwood, though, it just instantly makes me think of the post office outside of DC that's notorious for losing stuff.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't know why that connection stays in my head. It's been there for 30 years.
Whatever works for you, dude. Nicole became...
I have not been to OJ's house, nor have I ever worn the Bruno Machiavellis or worn a glove.
Well, we'll see about that. We'll see. So Nicole became Nicole Brown Simpson, and that happened the same year that OJ was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, over the years, Nicole and OJ would welcome two kids into the world, but their marriage was far from anything, to write home about. It turns out OJ was unfaithful, but he wasn't just unfaithful. He was also abusive. Friends and relatives have kind of later on recounted that they had seen bruising on Nicole's body, and police were called to their home multiple times.
911 emergency.
Can you get someone over here now to 325 Gretna Green? He's back. Please.
Well, okay, what does he look like?
He's O.J. Simpson. I think you know his record. Could you just send somebody over here?
Okay, what is he doing there?
He just drove up again.
He just drove
somebody
up.
over.
Okay, wait a minute. What kind of car is he in?
He's in a white Bronco, but first of all, he broke the back door down to get in.
Okay, wait a minute. What's your name?
Nicole Simpson.
Okay, is he the sportscaster or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
Wait a minute. We're sending the police. What is he doing? Is he threatening you?
I'm going nuts.
Okay, has he threatened you in any way, or is he just harassing you?
You're going to hear him in a minute. He's about to come in again.
Okay, just stay on the line.
I don't want to stay on the line. He's going to beat the shit.
Wait a minute. Wait, just stay on the line so we can know what's going on until the police get there, okay? Okay, Nicole?
Uh-huh.
Just a moment. Does he have any weapons?
I don't know.
Okay.
He went home and now he's back. The
Okay.
kids are upstairs sleeping, and I don't want anything to happen.
Okay. Has he hit you today or no?
No.
Okay, you don't need any paramedics or anything? Okay. You just want him to
Closed
leave.
my door. He broke the whole back door in.
And then he left and he came back?
Then he came and he practically knocked my upstairs door down, but he pounded it, and then he screamed and hollered, and I tried to get him out of the bedroom because the kids were sleeping in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then he wanted somebody's phone number, and I gave him my phone book and put my phone book down to write down the phone number that he wanted, and then he took my phone book with all my stuff in it. What?
What does he say?
What he always says.
Units, your domestic violence at 30 Correction 325 South Grizzly Greenway is too high. The suspect is now entered in the jail. And it is refusing a lead. It's code too high. Incident 4221 RD 825. Children involved. Just stay on the line, okay? Is he upset with something that you did?
Oh, a long time ago, it always comes back.
You can hear OJ in the call screaming and carrying on, and you can hear just the sheer terror in her voice and the fear to even be making the phone call. I mean, it's hard to listen to that, frankly. And there's numerous incidents, but one that kind of sticks out was in '89. There was a New Year's Eve fight where Simpson, OJ had allegedly threatened to kill her and left her with a split lip and a black eye and other bruises. That actually led to him being charged with spousal battery and pleading no contest. He was ultimately sentenced to 120 hours of community service, a $200 fine, and a $500 donation to a domestic violence shelter for women, along with 2 years probation. How do you feel about that, Bob?
California.
I mean, what got me about this was, okay, the donation to the domestic violence shelter, like, that's actually, that makes sense in all this. But, like, $500?
Right.
I know that we're talking 1990 money or 1989 money, but it was OJ. I think he could afford to pony up a more sizable donation than that.
Right. That's less than it cost for one of his shoes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, in the aftermath of that, they actually issued a statement saying that their marriage, quote, is as strong as the day we were married, if not stronger. OJ had also downplayed these events during an interview that was on ESPN. He said, quote, "Hey, you know, we had a fight. We were both guilty. No one was hurt. It was no big deal. We got on with our lives." So, I mean, he's just garbage. That's what I get from that, is he's garbage. They ended up divorcing in 1992. And despite divorcing, they kind of maintained this on-again, off-again relationship until 94. In April that year, they had went on this trip to Mexico. And then afterward, it seemed like there was this, like, finally there was this clean split, this break that they had decided to go their separate ways and whatever. But, I mean, as you can probably figure out from listening to some of this stuff, OJ is, was not a good person. And so that would not be the end of OJ's involvement in her life. And only a few months after this split from each other after the trip to Mexico in April of 94, the entire world practically would find out who Nicole Brown Simpson was for all the wrong reasons. Now, Bob said earlier, right, June 12th, 1994, I think to just sort of frame the conversation about this case, which, you know, we could talk about OJ and we could talk about Nicole and Ron and we could talk about the case. We could probably do a podcast just about the trial for, 50 episodes if we wanted to.
Oh, at least.
But we're really just trying to hit the highlights here. We wanted to provide a little bit of framework, some background for who these people are, and now, kind of take you through a timeline of what happened that day, and then just sort of pick out some of the things that are maybe a little more interesting to us about the trial, about the case,
and some obscure things, like nobody talks about OJ's upbringing or how he and Nicole met and what that was about, or the fact that they're on-again, off-again relationship. I say they, but more than likely it was probably her, but Kato Kalin, in an interview after OJ's recent death, said, look, that they had tried several times, but folks from the outside could tell, like, this is just not, this is not healthy, this is not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and they had 2 kids, and I can, you can understand, like, they're people. Obviously, he had some issues, which poster child for CTE, and I'm not saying that as an excuse for any of his behavior, but talk about a guy that probably got hit in the head enough times that you have to believe that had an impact. And, call it whatever you want, give it a diagnosis. Again, doesn't excuse any behavior, but to already have some of those predispositions, it seems like, to maybe, as you said earlier, his first wife said, to not be such a great guy, but you throw a repeated head trauma into that, and I'm left to think that it's probably only going to make things worse.
It's definitely not going to help. Definitely not going to make you a kinder, more higher thinking person. That's for sure. And it didn't in his case.
Yeah. So anyway, turning back to June 12th, 1994, Nicole and her kids and some others had went out to dinner at this restaurant called Mezzaluna. And that was in the evening, around like 6:30 or so. And then they get back home, after they stop for ice cream, and they make their way home around 8 o'clock. Around 9 o'clock that evening, one of Nicole's sisters called the restaurant because their mom had left her glasses at the restaurant. And so a waiter and friend, this guy, Ron Goldman, volunteered to return the glasses. Ronald, or Ron as most people know him, Goldman, was born July 2nd, 1968 in Chicago, Illinois. He grew up in the Chicago suburbs, and his parents divorced when he was 6. He and his younger sister were raised by their dad, and classmates described Ron as a kind, skinny kid. He played soccer and tennis and graduated high school in 1986. In the late 80s, he moved to California, and as many people that age do, he found himself sort of working in different jobs and really just trying to figure out what it was that he wanted to do with his life. He worked as a tennis instructor, occasionally a nightclub promoter, other odd jobs, even included modeling at one point. Now, ultimately, though, he sort of started to figure out that he thought he really wanted to be, he wanted to have his own restaurant. And that's probably what took him to waiting tables at Mezzaluna, the same LA restaurant that Nicole Brown Simpson frequented. Now, around 9 to 9:30, our guy, Kato Kalin, who was staying in the guest house at O.J. Simpson's home, and O.J. went to McDonald's for dinner, which I thought that was interesting, that like O.J.'s just eating McDonald's. You would think, given the way, like the persona he put out, you would think he just wouldn't even be spotted at a McDonald's, but...
Yeah, my understanding is he drove. They went through the drive-thru.
See, you got the detail. I think you were like hiding in Brentwood when this happened.
And they get back home from the Mickey D's, and Kato starts to, go in the house. He thinks, like OJ said, hey, you want to go get some grub? They go, they drive together, they come back. OJ goes to go in the main house. Kato goes to go in the main house, and he kind of gets this look and this sense from OJ that he didn't really want him there. And he's like, sort of makes this awkward excuse of, okay, so yeah, just checking. I'm going to the pool house now.
Yeah. So I'll leave. Yeah, exactly right. So around like 9:50-ish, Ron left the restaurant with an envelope that had Nicole's mom's glasses. And around 10:15 or so, there's a neighbor of Nicole's who is, I think he's like watching TV, just, normal nighttime evening, hanging out kind of deal. And he hears these cries and constant barking of a dog. Around 10:25, there's a limousine driver, Alan Park, who shows up at OJ's house. Do you know why he was coming to pick up OJ?
I think he was supposed to be going to, Chicago or something?
Chicago. And do you know why he was going to Chicago? Because it ties in with your whole, this is what I knew OJ as.
Well, I don't remember exactly, but he had some business to do there.
Yeah, so he had a gig with Hertz. He was supposed to be going, and I think maybe playing golf and some sort of an appearance or whatever. Basically, he had some of his I'm a spokesperson for Hertz duties that he needed to be doing in Chicago. So he was catching a red eye that night to head there to do that. And so this limo driver showed up and was circling the block and stuff even before he was supposed to get there, because it was a stretch limo and he wanted to make sure that he could, maneuver and get in the right spot and do all these things. So he didn't want to be late. And anyway, let's see. Where was I? So the limo driver shows up. Yeah. And then around 10:40 or so, Kalin hears 3 loud thumps on an outside wall of his room. Around 10:40, 10:45, the limo driver buzzes the intercom several times but doesn't get any response. So he calls his boss 10 or 15 minutes later and just says, hey, OJ's not here. What do I do? And his boss says, you need to wait until at least 11:15 because OJ's always late. Then around 11 o'clock, the limo driver, this guy Park, says that he sees a black person about 6 feet, 200 pounds, that's very descriptive, walking across the driveway toward the house. And then also around 11, Kalin goes to the front gate of the house to check the noise that he had heard, remember those thumps and stuff, and he sees the limousine driver at the gate. A little while later, the limo driver buzzed the intercom system, and this time OJ answers. And he says that he'd overslept and just got out of the shower. Around between 11 and 11:15 then, so a few minutes after that, OJ puts his bags in the limousine, and at 11:15 they leave for the LA airport. Now, just after midnight, Nicole's dog, this Akita, was carrying on, barking, howling, crying, however you want to describe it, making the noises that a distressed dog makes. And it had blood on its belly and its legs, and the sounds and then the sight of the dog really got the neighbor's attention. And the neighbor discovered 2 bodies, the body of Nicole Brown Simpson and the body of Ron Goldman. And these are discovered outside of her townhouse. And this is, again, just after midnight.
Yeah, I could probably draw that crime scene, at least the walkway, the gate outside there, from seeing it so many times.
Yeah, and I mean, that's absolutely true. And in case somehow you don't know or you haven't looked at this case or anything, there is a ton of, I mean, all that stuff is available online. And just to warn you, if you search for it, it's I'm sure there are some that are, you know, redacted or blurred or whatever. But I mean, those photos and all of that is available, not blurred out, not redacted, and you can see some it's pretty violent.
I mean, what I saw was on TV, and back then, like the chase, the pursuit, whatever you want to call it, with the white Bronco.
The intersection of the 5 and the 91 freeway. One thing we have been noticing, again, it's a very slow pursuit, followed by numerous highway patrol vehicles, but because of the intensity, it seems like people have heard about what's going on, and all the overpasses that we've seen have been lined with what has been going on down below, as the presumed vehicle of O.J. Simpson is still traveling very slowly northbound along the 5 freeway, coming up again towards the 91 intersection. At that point, we'll just have to wait and see which way he's going to go, but at this point, it's still a fairly laid-back situation, a dangerous situation at the same time, because again, the Highway Patrol does not want to intimidate, and I repeat, do not want to intimidate this vehicle into doing anything that they really don't want him to do, and the main thing is to get him pulled over as safely as possible. And there's only a couple ways that'll happen. One is him just pulling over and or running out of gas. So at this point, we can only pray that they'll be able to pull this off in a safe measure. At this point, it is a pursuit, and unfortunately, it has a lot of mitigating circumstances because of the high profile of the proposed suspect that's inside the vehicle, which could possibly be and appears to be at this time O.J. Simpson. I don't know if I should say this or not, but we have seen one vehicle in the past that actually ended the pursuit at Parker Center, so it'd be quite ironic if that was to happen with this one traveling all of the 5, get to Los Angeles, and then just go right and give up at Parker Center. So we'll just have to see what happens.
That was national news, all 3 networks. That was the only thing you are watching right now, unless you have some, you know, off-brand local channel somewhere that isn't carrying it. But that was all there was to it. It was a big deal, and it was the trial of the century.
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't take long after this for the police to kind of focus in on OJ, and it makes sense, right? I mean, everything's sort of, again, this scene, these murders they're violent. I mean, they were stabbed and murdered in a way that was, I think, brutal is the closest I can do. I mean, I'd say it's almost an understatement, but I mean, you got anything with that in terms of?
No, I mean, clearly it's personal. It's graphic and horrible and all those things.
And there's like blood everywhere. Yeah. I mean, like everywhere.
And from the police perspective, when you say it didn't take them long to sort of come up with what happened, even, I mean, initially he had to be the first suspect. I'm sure the first responding officers know who this person is, not only because she's OJ's ex-wife, but because they've had calls for service to her address for years. Whether it was that address or another address, you know, the place she lived before or whatever, some of them are probably familiar with the domestic violence history that's gone on. And if you have an ex-wife that turns up dead, who you happen to know has had multiple instances of domestic abuse with an ex-husband, he's probably going to be primary suspect number 1, 2, and 3.
Exactly. And it didn't take long. Police had accumulated enough evidence to point to OJ that they actually obtained an arrest warrant pretty quickly. And they had reached out to his attorney at the time, Robert Shapiro, and an agreement had been made that OJ would turn himself in at police headquarters by 10 a.m. on June 17th, which was the day after Nicole's funeral. So, again, the murders are the 12th, and they have a warrant for his arrest within a week. So, you know, there was a lot of evidence. There were a lot of things that pointed to OJ being the guy behind this, even initially. And like you said, even just the history of what had been going on in the relationship that they were aware of. So, as most people know, but in case you don't, he failed to show up like he was supposed to, which kicked off exactly what Bob has alluded to a few times, which was that, like, the slowest police chase in the history of famous police chases. And there's all kinds of You can watch the footage, and then there's the audio of whenever AC calls 911.
Right.
I always find that entertaining because he's like, they're asking him who he is, and he's like, man, you know who I am? Like,
right.
And then I think, so essentially then the police also, they allow him to come back home because that's what he wants. And then that's where he is arrested. He's arrested in his own driveway. And they find that he has $8,750 in cash, a false beard and a mustache, a loaded gun, and a passport in the Bronco. So not that dissimilar from Scott Peterson, really.
Right. But he was going to kill himself, even though he's got all the implements of escape.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too, because there was this what's referred to as the suicide letter. I'm using air quotes there. That was discovered that June 17th, that same day, right before the televised Bronco ride and arrest. And that, I honestly, when I started researching this case, I was unaware of that. Were you aware of this suicide letter, like the contents of it? No,
I don't. I mean, I may have been, 30 years ago or whatever, but not anymore.
Back when you were 45?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, in your 40s. Okay. So I just want to read it because I think this is like weird and fascinating, and it's something that, like you said, it's one of those areas of this case that I just was unaware of until...
Well, this ought to be about as enjoyable as listening to Courtney Love read Kurt Cobain's suicide letter.
You want me to make you read it?
No, hell no.
All right, so I was trying to be nice to you since I made you read all that stuff in the Anita Cobby case. I'll give you a break. Although, I don't know that you got a chance to see it yet. Bob's not quite as up on the socials as I am, but our dear listener and good friend, Jessica from Australia, said your accent was a little bit lacking.
Indeed.
That it was more of an English accent than a true Aussie accent. And she offered to do some voice recordings for us in the future if we ever go back to Australia. So,
well, that could be helpful because I admitted full on that I knew it was going to suck. I did my best.
I mean, it was entertaining, so give the people what they want. All right, back to this stupid letter. So here it is. This is what it says, and this is verbatim, so don't hold it against me. To whom it may concern, first, everyone, understand I have nothing to do with Nicole's murder. I loved her. Always have and always will. If we had a problem, it's because I loved her so much. Recently, we came to the understanding that for now, we were not right for each other, and at least for now. Despite our love, we were different, and that's why we mutually agreed to go our separate ways. It was tough splitting for a second time, but we both knew it was for the best. Inside, I had no doubt that in the future, we would be close as friends or more. Unlike what has been written in the press, Nicole and I had a great relationship for most of our lives together. Like all long-term relationships, we had a few downs and ups. I took the heat New Year's 1989 because that's what I was supposed to do. I did not plead no contest for any other reason but to protect our privacy and was advised it would end the press hype. I don't want to belabor knocking the press, but I can't believe what is being said. Most of it is totally made up. I know you have a job to do, but as a last wish, please, please, please leave my children in peace. Their lives will be tough enough. I want to send my love and thanks to all my friends. I'm sorry I can't name every one of you, especially AC Man. Thanks for being in my life. The support and friendship I received from so many. Wayne Hughes, Louis Marks, Frank Olson, Mark Packer, Bender, Bobby Kardashian. I wish we had spent more time together in recent years. My golfing buddies, Hoss, Alan Austin, Mike Craig, Bender, Weiler, Sandy, Jay, Donnie, thanks for the fun. All my teammates over the years. Reggie, you were the soul of my pro career. Ahmad, I never stopped being proud of you. Marcus, you've got a great lady in Catherine. Don't mess it up.
Is this an award acceptance speech?
Let me finish, but I don't disagree with that thought. Bobby Chandler, thanks for always being there. Skip and Kathy, I love you guys. Without you, I would never have made it this far. Marguerite, thanks for the early years. We had some fun. Paula, what can I say? You are special. I'm sorry we're not going to have our chance. God brought you to me, I now see. As I leave, you'll be in my thoughts. I think of my life and feel I've done most of the right things. What the outcome, people will look and point. I can't take that. I can't subject my children to that. This way, they can move on and go on with their lives. Please, if I've done anything worthwhile in my life, let my kids live in peace from you. Parentheses, the press. I've had a good life. I'm proud of how I lived. My mama taught me to do unto other. I treated people the way I wanted to be treated. I've always tried to be up and helpful, so why is this happening? I'm sorry for the Goldman family. I know how much it hurts. Nicole and I had a good life together. All this press talk about a rocky relationship was no more than what every long-term relationship experiences. All her friends will confirm that I have been totally loving and understanding of what she's been going through. At times I felt like a battered husband or boyfriend, but I loved her. Make that clear to everyone. And I would take whatever it took to make it work. Don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life, great friends. Please think of the real OJ and not this lost person. Thanks for making my life special. I hope I helped yours. Peace and love, OJ, with a smiley face drawn inside the O in OJ. That's the end of the letter.
The only thing I can say about the smiley is, like, was that his signature? Like, did he sign that way all the time? Because that could be just force of habit, not realizing you're putting a smiley face in a alleged suicide note talking about the death of your wife. And
I just pulled up his examples of his signature, and that is not. And he doesn't strike me as the hearts over the eyes, smiley face, O and the OJ kind of thing. So.
Look, I don't know. His daddy was a drag queen, so who knows?
I mean, yeah, but he wasn't, and he just doesn't strike me as the fun-loving kind of guy. Uh-huh. But yeah, looking at examples of signatures, I that does not appear to be a common thing that he did.
Okay, so
back to the note.
That's a long suicide note, and it read like an acceptance speech.
Yeah. I mean, again, suicide note is kind of in quotes. Like, some people have characterized it that way. I don't, just reading that, I don't know that I walk away thinking like, oh gosh, he's going to kill himself.
Well, I can't, I mean, it's just hard to even like hear that as a suicide note because you know that he didn't suicide himself, so.
Well, and again, it comes back to, okay, so you write that, you leave that, but then you're in a Bronco. Why do you need $9,000? Like, if you're going to go off yourself, you probably don't need any money to do that.
You could argue that however he ended up in that situation, that at one point he didn't know if he was going to have to run for his own safety, and he ended up with the suicide plan, and I don't know.
Anything's possible.
You could argue those things. I was very open-minded at the beginning and during the trial. Honestly, I was open-minded to what happened.
Okay.
I feel a little bit, I don't know if you've seen there's a movie, it might be called OJ, I don't know, but it sort of chronicles from when Shapiro takes the case on through the verdict, and at the end, the dude that's playing Bobby Kardashian, that weird idiot from Friends, I think it was.
It's a series, it's 10 episodes.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, Cuba Gooding Jr. plays OJ, right?
Could be. Okay. I just remember that goofy-looking guy from Friends.
Ross from Friends plays Kardashian, right? Yeah. Keep going.
Whatever.
Bob really hates Friends, in case you haven't figured that out.
But at the very end, when he gets acquitted and Kardashian goes out and vomits, because at that point he realizes, I've been supporting this dude and he actually did it. He's guilty.
Yeah.
So who knows how realistic that is? I don't know. I'm not friends with any of the Kardashians. Well, Robert Kardashian would be the only one I'd ever consider speaking to.
So I'm not even going to, I don't want to know. So the trial, right? Let's talk about that a little bit. So we've got the Dream Team.
Well, that trial was all about the Dream Team.
I mean, you're not wrong. I just want to frame the time frame, though. So the murders happened June 12th, 94. The trial starts January 24th, 95, which in a case like this, that's actually pretty quickly.
We'll continue this story in the next episode. Please join us. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us on the Brothers in Crime podcast. Feedback and suggestions are always welcome. For links and resources related to this episode, please see the show notes or visit us at brothersincrimepodcast.com. We hope you'll save, subscribe, or bookmark us on your favorite podcast site and join us for the next episode.